Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert alongside my dear friend, Father Joe Grimaldi. The Father Joe Grimaldi podcast, proudly supported by our good friends at Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln. The Lincoln Summer Invitation Sales event is in its final days. That means right now is the best time to purchase or lease any one of the exciting Lincoln vehicles. Do you realize it's already time to start thinking about the all-new 2020 lineup that's coming in? Yeah, that means it's just a matter of weeks before our inventory lot will be overflowing, and we need to make our best deals to free up that space. That's right, the Lincoln MKC, the Nautilus, the Navigator, the Aviator, Continental, MKZ, they are all priced to move and move now. Stop by Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, 12 Mile and Telegraph in Southfield. Mention you heard about it on the Father Joe podcast, and you'll get extra savings, additional savings, oh yeah. Shop online at starlincoln.com. That's starlincoln.com, and tell them Father Joe sent you. Now, it's back to school time. The school buses are out there. They're rolling by, Labor Day coming up, and oh boy, now we get into our fall routine. And I was thinking about, how do I ask Father Joe Grimaldi about his days as a teacher? And all of a sudden I thought, I have a lot of questions I could ask you about being not only a teacher but a principal.
I'm glad you have the questions. I'll try to answer them. We'll see what happens.
Okay, we'll call this Back to School with Father Joe. We may have even done it before, but I have a whole new list of questions for you.
Terrific.
You were a teacher and a principal twice.
At least, yeah.
Okay. All right. So you've been around a lot of different kids over a lot of years.
In different parts of the country, yeah.
Hawaii
and
in Birmingham, Michigan.
Right.
Where I went to high school.
Right.
Graduating in 1969.
Terrific.
Looking forward to our 50th high school reunion, and you are going to say the Mass.
And you don't look a day off the 30s, so there.
Okay. I have a really interesting question right off the top, and I teased you with it, so here you go. Do you think that the Catholic education system made a mistake by dividing students by their genders? In certain schools, not all, but many.
Made a mistake is a pretty serious question. Let's see. Let me put it this way. One of the advantages of having only girls or only boys in a class, there isn't a competition of people trying to impress the others. Now, for example, if it's co-ed, the guys are going to have to do all the right things to impress the girls that are in the class, maybe not as intent on their studies as they could be or would be. Same thing with the girls. They're trying to make sure that they're impressive to the guys. So basically, it works both ways, and the guys are trying to impress the girls too. And I think what happens is this, that very often studies take second place. Not completely, but I think you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the reasons for having single-sex classes in the schools at that time, so that they could get more serious on their studies.
All right, let me ask you this then. What about, and we're blessed with great public schools in our area.
Correct.
Really good schools.
Correct.
They have boys and girls, and, I mean, you're still graduating really bright students. I think social interaction on occasion might be a good thing.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that it's not, but It's not meant for everyone.
Oh, that's a good question. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, some people feel more comfortable.
Oh.
And when they feel more comfortable, I think the learning experience is easier.
I see what you're saying.
But, you know, I don't know. Do we graduate? That's another question you're going to ask, I think, so I better wait and see.
Yeah, all right. No, I'm just thinking about, like, locally here, and a lot of our listeners are in the area, so they're going to know what I'm talking about. Shrine High School. That's a co-ed school.
Correct.
I mean, it's wonderful. It's charming. It's small. It's community. And I just find it fascinating that no one's ever brought up the fact, is there a difference between Shrine High School and Brother Rice and Marion High School?
No, because I think we consider offering options. I think it's great to have a Catholic school that is co-ed and a Catholic school that isn't. Those are options. And I tried to maybe get to that point when I said, well, for some people, it's a much more comfortable situation. They feel they can be more serious and they need to be more disciplined in that area. With others, it's energizing to have both the boys and the girls together in class. Is one better than the other? I don't know, because I haven't studied it in depth, but I would say this, at least we're offering an option. And of course, we always assume that it's the Catholic schools. In the past, there were many of the private schools had single sex, and Cranbrook is one example.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not just Catholic schools that have that option.
Well, I think it's an important thing. I think you bring up a great point.
Yeah.
There are distractions. You're at an age where everything's just booming, you know what I mean?
Correct, yeah.
And blooming. And I'll say it, a good-looking kid next to a good-looking kid, maybe they start looking at each other and all of a sudden no longer pay attention to what they should be paying attention to. They're more curious about the natural things in life. I think she likes me. And that normally
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a normal thing. Yeah.
But they also may grow up to be fabulous, successful professionals.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you keep saying options. There weren't options until about 15 or 20 years ago. As a member of St. Bede, that was the high school that was participating in the overall growth of Brother Rice.
Okay. The reason why elementary schools in the Catholic religion were established was to protect the faith and to make it grow. And so that in the elementary school, one of the goals, and the main goal too, if you want, was the faith, religion. Now, in order to make sure that that kept on growing, you would want to choose a Catholic school. And if they put all of their efforts in promoting this one school, because this one school was in the same area as this particular elementary school, it was because at least they saw that the faith could be continued as the individual went to the high school. So, and I think that might be the main reason why, they chose to support Brother Rice.
Yeah, I don't want to get hung up on this, but I do believe that in 8th grade at St. Bede in Southfield, Michigan, the high school most likely for Ken Calvert to attend to continue his Catholic education was Brother Rice High School. Do you consider it to be a better source of education than public high schools?
If you just are going to limit it to the education value, I think the public schools in this area are very, very good. There's no question in my mind. To say that they are better or worse, I don't know.
Okay.
But I think what adds to a place like Brother Rice, whether it's Brother Rice or another Catholic school, is the religious factor. And so that this adds to people that want to have that religious background, they do that. Now, whether or not this is true, but many people saw the Catholic school as a place for not only a good education, but discipline, so that the kids will be able to learn discipline in the high school level and then eventually going through college and so on and so forth. So it was considered that way. In many other places where the Catholic schools are not, how should I put it, I hate to use the word inferior, but maybe other schools, private schools, seem to have a much better reputation than some of the Catholic ones. Mm-hmm. What happens there is that people then would choose the Catholic school for the discipline and the religion, not necessarily because it was well known for its academics. However, if you're in a disciplined environment, maybe the academics will flourish.
Real quickly, define discipline as you see it in the school.
having worked a lot in Honolulu, where unfortunately in that state, the school system is not necessarily considered one of the best in the United States. So private schools take on tremendous importance. And so that people will do anything they can to be able to send their children to private schools. Because Catholic schools are considered private in many cases, because you have diocesan, but you also have private. Mm-hmm. So because they are private schools, many people would choose to send their children to, let's say, a Catholic school, even though they themselves were not Catholic. So they were not choosing the school because of the faith. They were choosing it because of discipline and academics. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, there is a school in Hawaii which is run by the brothers, and it's interesting that many of the kids there came from military family because they saw discipline as something that they wanted, and it was stressed there.
Makes sense.
And so when you say define discipline, discipline is basically the way you have set your priorities in life, what comes first, what's important. Also, behaving in class.
That's where I was going.
Okay. Also, respecting other people. Mm-hmm. Also, if something serious is going on, there's action taken immediately. So people see this as a good source of discipline. So it's hard to say academically who's better. I always enjoy watching the advertisements for the various, even among the Catholic schools. This is the best.
Yeah.
Well, how do we know it's the best? Yeah. And basically, all we can see is the results. Well, kids that go to these schools, many of them are naturally endowed with tremendous and gifted, I want to say, academically. So it doesn't matter what the high school does. Those kids are going to succeed.
Right.
But it's the important thing is what happens to the kid that maybe doesn't have that gift. Does the school work with that individual that they can achieve?
You took my next question. Good for you. Go ahead.
So that they could achieve better heights, if you want.
Right.
And so I think that's where people hoped that would happen in the Catholic school.
Or find their place.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Maybe that teacher recognizes this kid has all the assets behind him financially.
Yeah.
He's got a great family. Unfortunately, some of us are not the brightest bulbs in the lamp shop.
Right.
Okay? And you have to recognize that as a teacher. So I'm going to put forth that you think maybe a Catholic Christian brother or a priest or somebody devoted to the Catholic Church may do a better job. Is that a stretch?
That is a stretch.
Okay.
We hope that they would. I mean, that's one of the things. We hope that they recognize that this particular kid needs a lot more coaching than another kid. And hopefully, in this particular place, this is going to happen. Someone is going to notice that.
And the students won't help.
I know what you're saying. Bullying is, well.
In other words, if the teacher delivers sort of a, Calvert, only you would say that, and the rest of the class goes, how do I know, or how do you know, that I don't go home crushed?
I'd be surprised if you don't.
Yeah, the teacher and the kids laughed at me.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm saying to you, that's where a teacher has to sort of see the room, be the room, and recognize those. And I'll say, like me.
Well, that differentiates one teacher from another. Hopefully, that doesn't happen at all. But it can happen, human nature being what it is. You're going to have a teacher that will say things they shouldn't say to a student who's trying his best, can only achieve so far. Well, that kid needs more attention, and that's what I think you want to do, but not that kind of attention where you call them a name or laugh or whatever the case might be.
That's where I'm going with this. It's Back to School with Father Joe Grimaldi, Principal Joe Grimaldi, Teacher Joe Grimaldi. You got to wear so many hats as a teacher. And that's what I wanted to do with this, compare one side of education with another, the gender relationship with education versus the other. Are you aware of the term helicopter parent?
I am now.
Okay. As a parent, I know that you are, and I am, and a lot of parents are because you hear it all the time. But for the sake of those people that have not heard of it before, it's a parent that's so deeply involved in their child's life, they are incapable or not allowed to do anything on their own. In other words, maybe a junior in high school being still dropped off by his mother saying, here's your lunch. Did you ever deal with that?
Of course.
What did you do?
Well, you have to try to, in a gentle way, speak to the people, speak to both the parents and the children. If they are children, some of them are young people, and you try to speak with them in an adult way to let them know that sometimes they have to be forgiving, that parents want the best for their children, and sometimes they don't know how to achieve the best in their children. And sometimes they will do things that might cause embarrassment to the student. But even more than that, I think kids have to be able to be kids at times. And if we're going to corral them in such a way that they can't do anything fun, they can't interact, and they can't go here and they can't go there, how are they supposed to develop socially and so on and so forth? But people forget, they're so intent. I think, for example, there's a tremendous emphasis on kids going to college. And to me, that's a good thing. The emphasis is so great that sometimes I worry about it because it takes away some of the fun from the kids' life. And when are they going to enjoy that? I mean, they need to grow up doing that, having some fun as well as concentrating on their schoolwork and things of this sort.
You don't hear parents say very often, gosh, I just wish the kid would go out and have a ball.
Yeah.
I wish he would just go out with his buddies and stay out too late and break a couple of rules. Don't hear that very often.
No, but they mean well. And I think this is where we can't judge them. And I think what we have to do is try to speak with them, try to make them understand that maybe this young person needs to have leeway to grow in other ways socially. And if we're going to corral him where he can't do anything, we're not going to be able to achieve that.
Finally, this. What about the kid that just doesn't want to be there? That helicopter parent or whatever, our family history. 5 generations of our family have gone to Brother Rice, and by golly, by gosh, you're going.
Yeah. Half the battle is when people want to be where the learning experience occurs. Mm-hmm. If they don't want to be there, there's nothing that can happen for the good. Let me put it this way. Now, kids are going to be kids, so they don't always want to go to school, this type of thing. Not all of them, but there are some that just don't want to. There are some that don't want to go to college. Now, that to me is a completely different topic. The academic life is not meant for all people, and not is it good for all people. We still need people that are good with their hands. We need people who are terrific plumbers, people who are terrific architect's assistants, people that can do things that are not necessarily academically oriented.
Yep.
But somehow we feel that if they didn't go to this fantastic college, they have failed. Well, not so. Not so. I mean, if, that's the other thing. How do you rate which college? Now, we were just talking about high school. Well, that's the same thing. You can get a fantastic education in a college that is not known by the whole world. And, when you can get a lousy education in a college which is known by the whole world. So, how do you judge all of that is not easy to do.
I do this all the time.
Yeah.
I always say final question, then you say something and I have one more final question.
Sure.
In 60 seconds, please tell us words of advice from Father Joe Grimaldi to parents whose children are just now starting secondary education, how to be involved and how not to be involved.
It's not an easy question for me to answer.
I knew that.
Let me say this, that first of all, kids need encouragement. They need to be bolstered and uplifted, okay? And so we do that in many ways. You have parents that are very involved in backing the school, promoting good opportunities for the kids to succeed, and they can do this behind the scenes. You have kids that when they come home in the evening, they need someone who will listen to them, and also someone who's able to distinguish when to let the kid be alone and when, to insert themselves into their lives. Kids sometimes do not want to admit that they want their parents to talk with them about the future. They just don't think that's cool sometimes. And yet, parents tread lightly, trying to figure out, because it's so different from one to the other. I don't think one standard holds for all kids or all parents. A lot of it depends on the psychological makeup of the parents even. Huh?
Right.
Parents, there are some that have common sense, and they're able to work that out beautifully. You have some that are so intent on making sure that their child is going to be the best ever, that no holes barred, huh?
Yeah,
and so that could be damaging in so many ways.
That is the helicopter parent. My kid's the best on the baseball team. My kid's the smartest in the class. My kid is going to be valedictorian. No, let him decide that. Let her decide that. Happy 50th anniversary to the class of 1969. We'll be celebrating in October. Father Joe Grimaldi will be saying our Mass.
And I think Joe Young is going to be the altar server.
Oh, boy, there are not enough lightning bolts in God's great universe to strike the altar when that happens.
Well,
but we'll see what happens.
I hope so.
All right, thanks so much for joining us on the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast.
See you soon, all of you. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.